Hi, I'm Jim Hemphill, features writer for IndieWire, and this is the Craft Roundtable for Cinematography, the craft that defines the look and visual language of television. Through light, composition, and movement, our guests create the images that shape how we experience every scene. Our guests today are, from Love Story, Jason McCormick; from The Chair Company, Ashley Connor; from Star Trek Starfleet Academy, Tommy Maddox-Upshaw; from Shrinking, John Brawley; and from The Testament, Greta Zozula. You know, I'm actually gonna start with you, John, because everybody else here is on a show that's in its first season. You're on Shrinking, you've been on with it for a couple seasons. Going into season 3, what was your thinking in terms of the kind of overall guiding principles for the visual style?
Each season has its own narrative arc, and it's very clear from the writers, you know, what that would be about. The first season's grief, second season's forgiveness, and the third season was moving on. And it gives you a lot of license, like for the whole of the season, to kind of make changes. You don't have to really live with all the choices that you might have made in a previous season. You can think of it as evolving what you're doing visually and finding some new visual language and some new approaches for that kind of fit in with that direction.
So what were some of the new things that you wanted to bring in this season?
Well, with forgiveness, you know, to me, the whole look is a little bit more open. It's a little bit more colorful. It's a little bit more hopeful, you know, and that was a kind of just a thematic idea that we had. And it can translate in lots of different ways in terms of the way you're lighting things, the way you're developing a look in pre-production, and the choices you make in terms of staging and coverage.
If you start to feel nervous out there, I want you to look up into the stands and see all of us and borrow our positive energy. And we're gonna project it at you. We're gonna be like,
what is wrong with you?
You look like you're vomiting on her.
I know, I heard it.
Greta, on The Testaments, it's a new show, but it's a spin-off of a show that everyone is familiar with. So what were some of the ways that you were influenced by Handmaid's Tale, and where did you want this to kind of have its own visual identity?
I'd say initial conversations were really about tone and color. Color was a big thing. So when you think of Handmaids, you think of red. And that was a color that we completely got rid of. And so those were the initial conversations. And then lighting was another one where we, kind of similar to what you're saying, like we wanted to create, because it's a different perspective entirely, to create this sort of more openness and softer environment, because ultimately the perspective that we're coming into is a lot more hopeful.
Agnes Mackenzie, how the time goes by. I have been watching you for quite a while now.
Why, Aunt Lydia?
Soon to be eligible.
May God make me truly worthy.
Ah, you will be rewarded. If you are free of sin, of course.
Tommy, similarly with Starfleet Academy, you're doing something which is a new show, but obviously has a vast history behind it. How much of that is on your mind?
It needed to be much in alignment with what he talked about. I mean, it's a learning environment, right? It's a whole new chapter of like Trek. And so we wanted to like, you know, a warm incubation of, you know, this new younger, you know, cadets and people, you know, Spock and everybody is up on the wall. We're trying to appeal to a YA audience more so than the Trekkies of the past 50 to 60 years. You know, I was trying to figure out a different format, because everybody, you know, in this sci-fi space especially is like anamorphic, clean, cold, long lens, reach on a 300. It was like, no, these are kids and they need to be learning about camaraderie, and then so people need to fit in the frames with each other, and let's make the lens way more intimate in terms of the environment and learning. So the palette went warmer, and then when they went on the missions, you'll see that I kind of cool it off, and mixed color and tonality is something I really, you know, I love to do just because I like to play around, but also it's like, I just felt emotionally it was different than what I saw.
Red alert! Red alert! Red alert! Red alert!
Hey. You don't have to say it, okay? That's what the warning's for.
I've had a day.
You're doing great.
Thank you, goodbye.
With Chair Company, you're combining some interesting things because it's a comedy, but it almost has this like film noir quality to it. Like for you, what were some of your reference points or influences?
All my references were kind of Friedkin, Michael Mann, we're looking at Thief, but we knew that we wanted to take the comedy much more seriously, and if the visuals could kind of ground it in a more serious container, then Tim and Zach's voices could kind of play a little louder. So we really tried to embrace kind of a 70s, 80s thriller look.
Get in! Quick!
Tim can play stronger and louder than the rest of the world, and we didn't need to put anything on top of that. I think we needed to kind of bring it down and bring it a little darker. But it was a little bit more like an indie film. Like, we weren't flying things, we weren't doing cranes. We just didn't have it on the table. So I said, all right, back to the basics. And for me, it was so fun to kind of approach location work very actively, and I got greedy. I was like, I really want to go nuts with the guys. And for me, it was just a TV show where nothing was out of bounds, and I had felt kind of restricted in a lot of TV work where you're sort of beholden to certain things, and it was so fun to just go as nuts as I could.
Jason, with Love Story, like, that show, one of the things I love about it is it feels like a movie from the 90s. It doesn't just look like the 90s. And I'm wondering for you, like, what are some of the things you were doing to try to achieve that look?
I like to start with a shape. The beginning was 185. So once I knew I was 185, then I just kind of reverse engineered the look from there. Like, okay, well, I'm at 185, I'll shoot spherical. Then I hooked up with an amazing colorist and just had discussions with him about finding these colors. And this look took that, and now I had the tools that I needed. And then the approach was really very much like, I try to think of it almost like photojournalism. Like, if you're in a room and something's happening, there's usually one place that's like perfect. Usually the most iconic photographs that we gravitate towards, it's one image from one spot.
Do you want to go ahead and we'll follow?
We've been photographed together plenty of times.
Right, I'm just thinking Narcissa's a designer. Someone connects the dots.
Connects the dots of a vast fashion conspiracy.
Sure, you're probably right. Let's just go.
That show's got incredible use of New York locations, and I'm wondering, like, what were some of the logistical challenges for you of all of those New York exteriors?
Shooting in New York is not easy. Like, shooting on locations is not easy. Having a New York crew, obviously, in New York locations, and, you know, people with finesse to try to work it out definitely helps. But, like, just, you know, shooting at Central Park, that football scene, it was like, you know, you scout and, you know, yeah, you can do this, yeah, you can do that, and it's like, you make all these plans, and the day before, no, you can't bring anything. Right, cool, I guess it's handheld. So you have to kind of be nimble. In other areas, though, like when we were shooting down in Tribeca, you know, we were able to, like, lock up a street, but you're still kind of dealing with, New York's not a film town. It's like New York, you know, like there's a lot of things that go on in New York before the film industry. So you're kind of always navigating that. But I think that's also what makes it fun. Because there's like this, you know, some of these environments, just people are, they're cussing you out, or you're hearing, you know, someone's fighting, but it makes it so fun, you know, I think it gives it that energy that you can't really duplicate on a backlot.
Well, I'd be curious to hear from everybody else in terms of how much do you plan what you're doing going in? Like, how precisely are your shots planned out, and how much room are you leaving yourselves to respond to what the actors are doing on the day?
We planned a lot. Like, we did a lot of work in prep, in part because we were trying to kind of thread that line with a past season. So we broke down every script. We had shot lists for everything. We had references. We had basically everything, and had many, many conversations about intention and where we were going with, like, we had 3 different points of views that we had to talk about and really figure out that structure. And, like, in the first episode, we have a shift in point of views, or like, how are we gonna kind of deal with that, and what does that mean? And then, to your point, it's like you then get to set and hopefully not throw it all out, but you rehearse and you find something on the day in the scene that's even better. But you have, like, all of this prep that you've done that you kind of lean on and go, oh yeah, that's right, we had these ideas, and, like, you know, you can kind of sprinkle those in, but ultimately it's like you find it on set.
Trek is just a different beast I had to learn, because depending on which way the camera pointed, it can end up being an additional visual effects shot, which is already accounted for in prep. X amount depending on the episode and what they wanted. There was a lot of X number of VFX shots. So then for a guest director, who's going to go ahead and decide to turn the camera another way,
You can't do that.
it's like, so who's paying for it? You know what I mean? Like, because what you don't think is a VFX shot ends up being one, even though, you know, the sets are so gorgeous and this and that, but story-wise, you have to count stuff from prep, which I didn't have to do like accounting with the director before, which is just something different. I had a learning curve. Our main set's 40,000 square feet, 3 stories tall.
Yeah, that like atrium thing.
The atrium, and then we would add VFX up top, and then like bots running around or something like that. But for the most part, like virtual production was used, the volume wall was used only for like certain things in season 1, like flying a bit and whatnot, but the rest of it was kind of like the actual set design, you know, and then there was like some locations that we did were being to the virtual world, but there was a good amount of season 1 that's like actual set designed by Matthew Davies and like these curvature sets and all this stuff, and we weren't even putting extensions. Just the way he designed it looked like it went forever, and I got to take my hat off to him, and that was one of the reasons why I ended up liking taking on the show, because it wasn't just green screens all the time. Although we barely used green screens except for like little extensions or stuff outside the window, and you know, and that would always have to be a discussion: is it green screen, projection, or you know, volume wall?
I love what you were saying, though, about being in the right place for that one moment. You know, I sort of came out of a documentary and shooting on film, and I think the process was always started with listening to know if you should be rolling on something or not. And then if you are rolling, like where would you have to be? Because you're only going to see it once to get everything or to get what you need. And I feel like I take the same process into, you know, when I'm blocking on set as well. You guys sound like you get scripts before you're shooting, and I'm not maybe so lucky. A lot of the time the script changes very rapidly in the last few days as you're approaching the episode, and because of the nature of the way they work with shrinking, a lot of time it gets built on the day with the actors. They kind of add a lot of things. There's a lot of improv that happens as well, and so you sort of have to be just very responsive. It's like jazz to me, like as opposed to symphony where you're sort of planning something out and orchestrating it, and it's got to be, you know, just right for it all to come together. I feel like I've just got to react to what's happening, and I feel like that kind of idea you were saying about just picking that one spot to be with the tools that you have, then that's the kind of right way to do it.
I find that it's really a lot to do with understanding the environment. So I always understand the environment. That's my prep. Like this room, okay, I know I'm working with this light or these windows or whatever, you know, the things that
the space.
The space. And once you understand the space, then it's like, okay, let the actors play, because I think it's just, there's so much discovery to be had, and I feel like I respect the process of having a plan and going in and like, okay, we're gonna have that.
Yeah.
But the environments that I've been in the last few years, I've been really fortunate to work with people who trust me. And if I have that kind of trust, then it's like, just throw a bag on my head, bring me in the room, take it off. What are the actors doing? And I'm gonna have a real honest response.
It's like, it's good to have a plan, but like both of you were talking about, it's also leaving that space for the actors.
And I've seen people try to force and reverse engineer into a plan, and you're like, it would be nice if they all stood in a row and looked at each other and said their line. But it's not happening, because
even they'll even tell you that they will.
Yeah, but the table's curved, so you have to be free.
Yeah.
For the most part, you'll know the environment. So I know the light's coming through here. It's not Star Trek, so it's like the sun, and it's coming through here, so I don't have to think about things that aren't natural. I'm being motivated by naturalism.
Yeah, and it is so true. Like scripts do change, so you do make a plan, and then you're like, oh, that scene's gone. Okay, and
you're emotionally broken then, because you're like held onto your plan, and now you're like debating with somebody about like, I know that was the plan, but like it's not the plan anymore. So what do you want to do about it?
Never be too emotional with the plan.
You just be free.
Yeah.
Just try to be free, and then I think like the best version, if you're open to it, will present itself.
I like it to just have those conversations about what things mean. Like what a character is going through, like ultimately what the goal is.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
good in the page turn.
Yeah, but not like, this is what we're doing and we're going to stay in this box.
Because then the plan can change, but you're still going to the same direction.
You know the emotional arc of the scene, where you need to be. Like there's a moment in that scene that someone wrote that's like, that's the most important part. So then you're almost kind of, it goes back to coverage. Sometimes you'll start with that and get that. Okay, we got that out of the way. Now we're now we're free, we're playing with house money, and you could kind of, all right, let's do a master now. Like, not try to break the structure up a little bit and go to what's most important.
Yeah, like shooting a master first isn't necessarily the right thing. Yeah.
Well, speaking of coverage, I know most TV shows are shooting stuff with multiple cameras. How many cameras are each of you shooting with, and what are the pros and cons of multiple cameras? And when you do shoot with multiple cameras, how do you kind of avoid compromising the lighting?
We only had 2, sometimes an additional, but like we were a very kind of small operation, and we never wanted to do like traditional coverage if we could avoid it. So I had one camera on a 250 through a window and offsetting, but our schedule was such, which I'm assuming everybody can understand, they're just losing days off of schedules, so you have to work faster, harder, more, and very quick, and we didn't really have a lot of gear to play around with, so it was like speed and efficiency and how to kind of get it done in the time. But I find 2 cameras on TV to be my sweet spot. Anymore, you compromise lighting too much. And when you can do single perspective, it makes, I think, the shot much stronger, but producers will rarely let you do that. But yeah, you gotta cook. I think, especially on Tim's show and the amount of writing that there is to get through in a day, you really kind of have to smartly design and break down and lose, add, adjust to what's happening in front very rapidly.
We use 2 mainly, but we have 3 all the time. 2 is usually what I try to go to, but it's like reaching in. It's like I want them to be close. So that was kind of like one of the things that I was trying to break away from the other shows, that reaching in on super long lenses, and they would just start shooting, all spaghetti western of it all, and I was kind of like, I'm not doing that. So let's 65, 40, but I'm saying the wides you can do 3 cameras, right? Because I'm humongous space, but then like getting in multiple people, it's like, okay, who's tighter than the eye line? Then 65, which is like our longest that I would let them really kind of get on, then it's like everything wider than that. And then a specialty, we would use like a 300 or something. And then we happen to have some lenses that got us into like 15 inches in anamorphic. That was really kind of ridiculous. So then it was like, you can start here and then yank back on a 40-foot techno in anamorphic. But I hate reaching in and just like, this, that, and that, and this. It's like just one of those things. So then we try to just get a bit more intimate with everybody, and, but 2 to 3. Action stuff like 6.
We had 2 cameras. Sometimes I feel like you're up against it, and there's this idea that it saves time, and if you shoot coverage, it's like it gets rid of a setup. I don't find that it saves that much time. I like to leapfrog even within a scene, so it's like if we are doing the master last or something, we use one camera and then go to the other camera and sort of try to set that up while we're doing other coverage. I find that works, but I really try to stay away from forcing 2 cameras in, and then, every once in a while it's based on performance, and there's really a need for 2 cameras, so I'll do whatever I can to make it work, keeping like that in mind. And then, sometimes there's like a big action piece. We had one in episode 6 where I had 4 cameras. But kind of similarly, like it wasn't so much for 4 camera coverage, it was more like we had one on a crane. We were shooting on 3 different levels of the stadium. So it was just like sort of getting ahead of things and just sort of getting things going instead of forcing it.
I'm the opposite of all of that. I mean, normally we have 3 cameras full time, and we try to use them most of the time. But what we try to do is we often start with closer shots. We don't tend to do close-ups necessarily. A lot of comedy, I think, plays better in looser frames anyway. And you're right. I think having more cameras does not save you time, but it does mean you don't wear out the material. You can do less overall takes, and especially I think with comedy, it also gives you the ability, especially if you have actors that improv a lot, they can kind of talk over the top of each other within a take, and the intra-take continuity will match if they're doing something different. So we like to start off with a cross shoot if we can. And often the third camera, what I try and do then is do something that's not conventional. A and B might be in studio mode, and the C camera will go handheld or something and do a profile, or try and get some detail that might be happening in the scene. And I usually encourage them to do something different each take, like go find a different shot each take. And I think that kind of gets you a little bit more sense of what's happening in the scene. You can kind of react emotionally to what's happening depending on what's going on. Some stuff with one camera, if you're doing Steadicam, trying to choreograph something that plays like it's a one, although rarely does it ever survive doing that, but you can kind of go in with that idea. And, some of those other kind of, when you go exterior, we can do some more interesting things. But I feel like with the way the comedy works on this show, and the actors really like starting with the kind of coverage, and you actually spend more takes doing that first setup. And then, you finish with something wide maybe at the end, or some flourish that you might want to put in, like a move or something that punctuates it. But that's kind of our model for shrinking anyway.
How do you guys handle that when you do like this big Steadicam shot and you're in this TV space, and it's like, it frustrates me to the point where I openly say to directors and like producers now, especially director, I'm like, why are we gonna waste all this energy, everybody on here making this one happen, and then you're gonna bust it? So let's not do it if we're going to bust it, because
call them out.
Because the thing is, the crew. Think about the grips. Between the grips, picking up the camera, if like you're doing a handoff of something, a steady camera, like all these people are maneuvering all this work for like 6 hours. Then it gets on screen. It's like 3 seconds. You're like, for real? It's like for real. That was you just like, we could have been way more productive going into it and just not do it, and then move on. And it's helped out because they start to see it, and it does the morale I've noticed of crews, no matter where I am. Once you keep hearing that same thing, they don't believe it in the TV space. They're like, don't believe the shot will last, but what? And it's kind of like, that's why I'm like, no, you guys,
like 6 hours of your day.
Come on.
One shot. You're
we all can be doing other good stuff. That's exactly it. You're turning colors over there.
No, I mean, I operate, so the way that I've approached it in the last few years, I try to do a shot till it breaks. So it's one camera. And if I'm working off a jib, off a remote head, I can have my director. And I'm a big fan of less takes, more setups. So that way I can work faster. Like, don't languish in the one shot if you know you're gonna cut anyways.
Yeah.
Like, let's just be honest. So,
right.
I mean, kind of blending his question with your question, it's what is it gonna be? If you're gonna cut it, then let's just get to it. Let's maybe start with the meat of the scene and then work your way out.
Right.
If you're not gonna cut it, then stick to your guns and do the oneer.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, everybody's been there where it's like, yeah, let's do it. And then, somebody might, let's just get one shot.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's like, that's part of it. I've learned to like not get emotional about that. This is this format, this is this medium. It can't be 3 hours long. It needs to be 45 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it needs to be. It needs to exist in a box. So whatever you're in love with might not fit in the overall. So I'm just here to serve whatever's best for the edit. I'm always thinking about the edit. And that's where it goes back to, if I'm working with one camera, I might have a second one to jump on to steady, but just shooting with one. But get them big on, like, I'm starting a campaign, less takes, more setups. If you can agree to that, you can be dangerous with one. Because I'll just do 2 takes. I'm like, I think you got it. You want it.
Sometimes one camera's a lot faster. I find it's faster, right? Because you're not so fussing around with making
it's
it
way
work
faster.
for 2 or 3
and if
cameras.
I do the math, if I have a pick point to the arc of this scene, for example, I mean, you just go straight right there. I have a wide. I can arc an arm over here, do overs. I can swing in, do singles, all from one track point. So if I can see that in the beginning of the setup, I'm like, I can cover almost this entire scene from one setup. And then, okay, let's pop off and do something else. But I'm working way faster. But you got to get them on board with, that's the catch.
Yeah.
It's less takes. It's not about coverage. And that goes into a bigger thing in this format in terms of a showrunner versus an episodic director. And somebody who's going to be like, well, I better turn in a lot of options in an edit because I want to get another job, versus someone who's like, I know what I want. I got what I wanted, let's move on. So you do 2 takes, 3 takes. Someone else might do like 8 or 10, and then, you're running out of time. Better throw in that second camera.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like on TV especially, I try to catch the edits as early as possible to see what tonally they're going to do and how they've been handling the footage, cutting up the footage, and that can inform the sort of swings that you can take if you want to go more aggressive or more stylistically crazy on the shot. But then also understanding what they're doing functionally brings me more into a world where I'm like, well, I don't want my shot to get cut up if I'm gonna do this and spend the time. So like, I really have to be planned and smart and in line with what the show is trying to accomplish, not just me doing like the coolest shot that I could think of. And I think that's taught me a lot. I don't always watch things on movies because like, I feel like I'm in a space in a container and I've made a decision, but on TV, it's such a longer process that you really want to be able to take risks when you want to take a risk and then get through the other coverage like as quick as you kind of can to tell the story appropriately.
What Tommy was saying about the morale of the crew kind of leads me to another question, which is, how do you see your responsibility in terms of creating an environment that's going to make everybody comfortable and able to do their best work? I mean, I know people generally think of that as the director's job, but especially in TV, I feel like a lot of it falls on the DP.
I think for me, I feel a lot of responsibility because one, you don't want to break your crew. You don't want to push them too hard and then they're terrorized and angry and grumpy and don't want to work. So like you kind of have to find the balance, and there are days where you're going to go over, there's days when you're going to go really over, and sort of prepping them and priming them. And it's my responsibility to kind of be in charge so that I feel like 12 hours, 13 hours is a really long day, and you should be prepared enough and planned enough to understand like what those constraints mean. And as a cinematographer, you should be ready to make that happen, because 14, 15, 16-hour days, it's why, you know, I have a kid. I have a 2.5-year-old. And it's why you look at your crew and they look so tired and dangerous things happen. And I think safety on set is something like post-pandemic, everyone was like, we're gonna do continuous hours, we're gonna do 10-hour days, and that just doesn't really exist in America. So I don't know, I think there is a responsibility on us in charge of the set to protect those people while also getting to do our full creative vision and not compromise, but it's, you know, important.
When it comes to how I deal with my crew, I have a level of energy that, you know, I'm having a good time. I like to play music in my headset, my bolero, and, you know, I'm like talking, I have a game plan, but it's like when it comes to like making sure the crew works X amount of hours and we're not gonna do overs and this and that, and how much have they been going during the week? Because if majority of the shows I do, I'm doing the pilot and I'm doing the series, I need them like by episode 10, I usually do pilots and finales, so it's like, I need them to have a level of energy for when I do the wrap up of the season, so then I try to keep my energy a certain way, but when it comes to hours and exhaustion, I've lost jobs because I've gotten really verbal with producers who want to just keep shooting, and I went just full boat on them. I'm an East Coast guy, and I gave zero, you know what.
Yeah, the realities of exhaustion reverberate beyond being on set.
Yeah, and I feel like, by the way, everywhere else in the world, it is 10-hour day is normal. It's only here that it's 12-hour plus seems to be normal. And, you know, I feel like it's in our wheelhouse because we have the most control over that on set in terms of the momentum and the leadership that you have with the crew and the interface. So I feel a great responsibility, and also for setting the tone as well with the kind of workplace that you're in, for people to be able to creatively contribute and take risks. You know, it's really the tone that we set filters down, and I'm lucky enough on Shrinking that they have a great culture too with the showrunner who also feels the same way. And so, you know, it's a unicorn of a place. So I've been in plenty of those places where, you know, it's horrible and you're doing these long hours and it's just expected, but it's great. I can say that we rarely don't go past 10 hours on Shrinking, which is great.
Yeah, and also just constantly checking in and communicating, like just throughout the day, throughout the whole thing, just always just being together and part of the process and talking about the week, talking about the day. I mean, what you're saying, just really like keeping on top of it and advocating for them.
Tommy, something you mentioned, when you were talking about directing the pilot, it made me think, so on a show like Star Trek Starfleet Academy, do you have more time for the pilot than they typically have for the individual episodes? And if so, do you have to think about, not only are you doing the best job you can on the pilot and establishing the visual language for the show, but also creating something that is then replicable for other DPs and directors who come in after you?
Yeah, and that's part of like just my plan. As I figure out what the arc is of the series for that season 1, talk to the showrunner, talk about the visual design that I came up with, merge it with what their thoughts are. Then it's like, okay, when I start to design things with a lighting designer, I try to have something in place so then we pre-program certain things. We have certain tools for certain things, and everyone, you have options to interpret it, but it's like, how many different ways can we achieve this type of quality of light, considering we're using this and that. It's like, I just try to make it so then, hey, hopefully they'll choose this option, but you can also make this, in this bounce light how many different ways, you know what I mean? Like, they're only gonna have half of the time that I had on the pilot, and I had to be a little conscious of the fact that I wasn't gonna have the same time by the time I got to the finale because somebody else was on the back end.
I think when you're doing a pilot, you're also figuring things out, right? So you're trying stuff out. People are still learning each other's names, and then you get to a certain point where the crew become match fit, and that some of that goes away, but that time. And also you're trying to figure out if the visual approach is right, or if you got to change course a little bit.
Right, and just get everybody on the same page. Just hope the personalities click, right?
Yeah.
That's the trickiest part, I think, when you're still figuring it out, and when the next DP comes on, and you can have many conversations, you can build something to reference whatever it is. The fact that you are still kind of figuring it out, and there might not be something to look at right away, so you're sort of trying to communicate certain things that worked and didn't work, but without sort of having a visual reference, it can be.
There isn't even a cut.
Yeah,
by
exactly.
the second block. Yeah.
So and maybe you're still not quite sure that one thing worked yet. So you're like, I think this is sort of the path we're going down, but it might change in the edit. It's tricky.
I feel like I've done pilot to series immediately, but I really appreciate having some separation, a bit of a wall build between what you did and some perspective to see what I feel like worked and what didn't, or what people responded to. And for Chair Company, we did the pilot, and then they wrote the rest of the series, so we almost had a year between to kind of really internalize the decisions that we had made. And I did all 8 episodes because I'm crazy and I wanted to.
Well, in terms of production design, Greta, how closely are you collaborating with the production designer and the costume designer? Because The Testaments has such a controlled palette.
My first meeting was with the production designer and the costume designer, and the first conversations we had was about the color palette. I think we tested 100 different purple plum colors, 100 different green colors for costume design alone. And then with like paint color and color contrast and all of that, like I probably was in Martha Sparrow, the production designer, in her office like every week, just going through everything. And she was like, okay, we're gonna pick the green color for the like main staircase in the academy, and we're gonna build like 5 flats, let's test them. We would do stuff like that. Similarly, like our set was not nearly as big, but it was 2-story, like sort of one wing of a school, and like 0 VFX, like all windows practical, the whole thing. But yeah, I would say we talked about everything.
Well, we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but it's come up in different parts of this conversation, the kind of speed you need to work at sometimes in TV. I mean, even on a well-resourced show, it's not like movies. I mean, you're always kind of up against time and money. So what have you found are the best ways for you to sort of maximize your resources?
I think for me, it was really creatively aligning with my camera and G&E departments and kind of talking them through, obviously stylistically what the show is about, but really locking in with them to kind of, we built a lot of track for our show's page count per day, and just kind of leaning on them and their talents to kind of show up for the show. And everyone's such a big fan of Tim and Zach's previous work, that they were so excited to kind of work really hard. And I think I owe a lot to my crews to make those schedules work, because they can be brutal.
I think it all starts at the top, your energy with your director. For myself, working with Max, the two of us had a lot of autonomy, and we had worked together before. We get along really well. There's a bit of a shorthand, and we both kind of are lined up in what our goals are. So it can become more like, touch passes. You can move through the day. We never had really like crazy long days. We were always, and it's funny, you could work with a different director with the same page count and it can go twice as long, just because of that director's appetite or their apprehensions, or you're not in sync with them. But on Love Story, at least in my experience working with Max, it flowed because we were like that, and then we had a good time, and it was light, and there was a lot of talking shit. I'm on headsets. The crew is light, like you feel like you're just moving. So I think it's just really about creating that energy and creating that focus in the creativity. And the actors get in on it, and all of a sudden you're a point and you're just coasting through it. It's possible, regardless of the budget. I think it starts with the tone of the people that are pushing the pace. If they're going to be like, oh, I got to do, tons of takes, or they're greedy about coverage, or whatever it is, or precious about lighting, or any of those things can really bog it down. But back to your question before about, being a cinematographer and being like a leader and how that pertains to the crew, you are the tone, whether you like it or not. It's not like it's not up for debate, or how do you feel, or do you think that's real? Trust me, it's real. Like, you absolutely are the tone. And if you are lucky enough to shoot the pilot, you're setting it, well, all those people signed up to work with you. And they got out of bed and left their families, and they're working with you on something because, they believe in it, they believe in you. So I think it's just sort of like you become a maestro of an orchestra, and it's up to you, if you're playing jazz, to get people in rhythm, to kind of get that creative energy going, to feel like a place where you feel safe, like, hey, it's the same safety as like, not like, hey, I'm tired, but like, hey, there's a flag in the shot, or hey, that you're at the wrong stop, or whatever it is. All those things slow you down because you have to redo it. If you have an open space that's creative and safe, and you feel like there's harmony and there's rhythm, you can flow through anything. So I think it really starts at the top.
Prep and more prep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's where prep really comes in. Keeping that rhythm. Like, if you can like jump ahead on something, I think there's like a flow to that with the crew as well. It's like, it just feels like you're constantly getting something done, instead of sort of like a frustration of oh, now we're going into the next set and we're like getting into it, and everyone, it's like very daunting. It's like, if you can sort of get certain things rolling. I would like try to approach lighting that way too. It's like, whatever you can pre-light is another thing that I just personally like to do.
I think that's a great note to end on. I mean, I really appreciate you all coming and talking with me today. As I said, I'm a big admirer of all your work, and this has been great, so thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I've seen a little bit of, I've definitely watched this show. I've watched John's. I gotta watch you guys next. It's fun stuff, like both.
Content warning.